The federal government is investigating a hacking maneuver tied to the Chinese Communist Party. The FBI and CISA saying it targeted commercial telecommunications infrastructure. Unconfirmed reports suggesting that former President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance may be among those targeted. The two agencies say they immediately notified affected companies, rendering technical assistance and sharing information to assist other potential victims. The statement also saying the United States government is collaborating to mitigate the threat and coordinating with industry partners to strengthen cyber defenses. The agencies encourage any organization that believes it might be a victim to contact its local FBI field office or CISA. Earlier this week, Microsoft warned that foreign adversaries, including the CCP, Russia, and Iran, are attempting to influence the November U.S. election, and their efforts may escalate as the election nears. Vice President Kamala Harris is getting off the beaten path of her usual swing state visits. She's holding a rally in deep red Texas. NTD national correspondent Jason Blair is on the ground in Houston. Jason, with the election so close, why is the vice president taking time to campaign in the great state of Texas?
Yeah, Steve, that is an interesting question. Why is she coming out here with the election so close? Republican, reliable, swinging Texas. So basically the campaign says that they want to highlight the abortion issue coming out here and get some national attention and actually get the message back to some of those swing states and the voters in those states and get some attention on this issue for people who really do consider this an important issue coming into the election. And then Harris and the campaign said how they're going to do that is basically highlight Texas' strict abortion laws and basically use them as a warning to these swing states saying, hey, you know, this is something that could happen in your state if Donald Trump is elected for a second term. And basically, they're just saying that, you know, a lot of the states have been making their own laws now, and this is really something that could happen in other states as things move on.
So,
real harm has occurred in our country. A real suffering has occurred. People have died. And it is important to highlight this issue because this is among the most critical issues that the American people will address when they vote for who will be the next president of the United States.
And yeah, Harris has talked a lot about how if she were elected, she would bring back federal protections for abortion rights. I do have a clip from her talking about that earlier today before she came out here to Texas. Have a look.
It is my pledge when Congress passes a bill putting back in place reproductive freedom, I will sign it into law.
And so while she's here, she's also going to be on the Brene Brown podcast, a very highly watched podcast. And like I said earlier, the campaign is really hoping to generate some buzz, some viral moments that get back out to these swing state voters and reach them as well.
Make some noise in this building.
Jason, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me. I can hear it's getting loud where you are right now. The campaign has been tapping into a lot of star power lately. Yesterday they were in Atlanta, Georgia with Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama. Are there any special guests expected this evening?
Yeah, they definitely have been getting into a lot of star power, bringing out a lot of special guests. Now there have been reports that Beyoncé and Willie Nelson are going to be here. The campaign has not explicitly confirmed that. However, going by how things have been going, Beyoncé and Willie Nelson are both from Texas, and they have been getting special guests in each of the cities by people that actually live there, like Samuel L. Jackson came out in Atlanta, that's where he's from. Eminem in Detroit came out and introduced Harris. So the odds are pretty good. When Harris was asked about that specifically earlier today, she just said, quote, more will follow. So take that as you will. We'll have to wait and see, but the odds are pretty good. We'll see, if not Beyoncé, at least a couple of stars here tonight. Steve?
NTD's Jason Blair live tracking the Harris campaign down in Texas. Thank you for that, Jason. And now our Washington correspondent, Luise Martinez, joins us from the Data Hub to shed some light on why Democrats would spend precious campaign time in a largely Republican state.
Texas is Democrats' perennial dream for decades now. Democrats have dreamt of flipping the Lone Star State red, and that is because many Democratic strategists believe that demographics are destiny. Now, let's look at the latest polls coming from the state of Texas to see if this perennial dream of Democrats has any ground to stand on. If we look at the presidential race, we see that former President Donald Trump is leading in the race against Vice President Kamala Harris by 6 points. And if we look at the race for the Senate that right now Senator Ted Cruz holds in the state of Texas, also we see Republicans leading in the polls by 4 points. So why would Democrats have any hopes of flipping Texas red when they are behind in the polls, both presidential and senatorial race? That has to do with demographics and what has happened to the state and in the state of Texas since 2016. Let's look at this next slide. Here we have the share of eligible voters in the state of Texas that are registered to vote. We can see that in 2016, 55.5% of eligible voters in the state of Texas were registered. That increased through 2020 to 2024 to 60% of eligible voters in the state of Texas. That's about 3 million more voters in the state of Texas. And here's where Democrats are hoping that the majority of this 3 million new registered voters in the state of Texas are going to vote blue. Now, why would Democrats have that hope? Well, it has again to do with demographics, where people have been moving to in the state of Texas. Let's look here at the map of the state of Texas. We can see that 70% of the population of Texas lives in these 4 cities, in Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, heavily urban, suburban areas. We know from the polls that those usually favor Democratic candidates. We also know that, for example, in the city of Austin, 60% of the population has a college degree, another statistic that usually favors Democrats. Now, let's look at the last bit of information that gives Democrats hopes of flipping the state of Texas red, and that is the voting trend since 2016. We can see here that when former President Trump beat Secretary Clinton in 2016, Trump had an advantage of 9 points. But in 2018, the Republican senatorial candidate who was seeking re-election, Ted Cruz, only edged Beto O'Rourke by 3 points. And in 2020, Trump only beat Biden by 6 points. So what does these numbers tell us? They tell us that from 2016 to 2020, Trump has lost support in percentage points in the state of Texas from Republicans vis-a-vis Democrats. And we also know that Ted Cruz underperforms former President Donald Trump when he is alone in the battle. So we go back to the polls. We can see that former President Donald Trump, yes, he's ahead by 6 points, but Senator Ted Cruz is only ahead by 4 points. That is within the margin of error. And Congressman Colin Allred will be hoping that Friday night's rally with Vice President Kamala Harris in Houston will help voter turnout. And that is the explanation as to why Democrats have this perennial hope of flipping Texas red.
President Biden visiting a Native American tribe in a key swing state today. It's marking a historical first, but also coming as Democrats are seeking to woo Native American voters. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Fulfilling a promise made nearly 2 years ago, President Biden on Friday paid his first visit as the president to a Native American tribe. Biden also becomes the first U.S. president to formally apologize for the federal Indian boarding schools. Those schools ran for over a century, separating American Indian children from their parents to assimilate them.
Tens of thousands of Native children entered the system. Nearly 1,000 documented Native child deaths. I formally apologize as President of the United States of America for what we did.
The White House says President Biden has been wanting to make this trip for a while. The visit to the Gila River Indian community also comes less than 2 weeks before Election Day. Arizona is a key swing state, and over 200,000 voting-age Native Americans live in Arizona, which Biden narrowly won in 2020 by just around 10,000 votes. The Harris campaign has ramped up its efforts to court Native American voters, and Vice President Harris visited Gila River land earlier this month.
This election is about two very different visions.
Former President Trump was also in Arizona on Thursday, though he has yet to visit the Native American communities there. Meanwhile, the Arizona GOP has been trying to make inroads by meeting with the tribal groups there and urging them to vote Republican. Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
Large at the Washington Post, Robert Kagan has resigned. This comes after the paper chose not to endorse any political candidate in this presidential election cycle. In an opinion piece, the paper's publisher and CEO, William Lewis, saying, quote, "The Washington Post will not be making an endorsement of a presidential candidate in this election, nor in any future presidential election. We are returning to our roots of not endorsing presidential candidates." The announcement is a blow to Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris. The Washington Post has endorsed every Democrat for president since 1976, except in 1988 when it didn't endorse anyone. In a separate article, the Washington Post says its editorial team already drafted an endorsement of Harris, but the paper's owner, Jeff Bezos, decided not to publish it. Kagan has been a vocal critic of former President Trump. He did confirm to Fox News that he resigned due to the paper's decision not to endorse any candidate. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.